Hello guys and welcome back to the Hello World Guy. In this video we are going to get started adding the shooting to our first person shooter game. So first of all, I've got my Unity scene loaded up here, and in the last video we could do all of the movements. So let's get started adding the shooting now. But of course, in order to actually do shooting, we need to have something to shoot at. Therefore, the first thing, just for testing, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go under my hierarchy here, and I'm going to right click and add in a cube. I'm going to rename this cube to enemy, and then I'm going to move it down here and just push it right there. I'm going to just increase the scale a little bit, and yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so that is going to be our temporary enemy here, so that we can shoot him and find out when it actually gets shooted. I'm not going to do anything too complicated here. I'm just going to go under my scripts folder and add a new script, and I'm going to call this one enemy. Now if I open this up in Visual Studio, then what we are going to do is we are going to add just a function to apply damage to our enemy. So as soon as this loads up, so now we are going to add actual damage to our shooting. So first of all, I'm going to remove this debug.log statement because we really don't need that. We only need the raycast. And now we need to get actual information about our raycast. To do that, what we can do is we can use an out variable here. So a variable of type raycast hit info, raycast hit info. Alright, raycast hit called info, or just call it hit, I guess. Okay, we will call this hit, and this is a type raycast hit, and this is a out variable, which means that it will be modified. So I'm just creating it on the spot like this. So now we have got a variable called hit, which contains all of the information we need. For testing, what we can do is we can say debug.log, and then we can say hit.collider. Hit is any type of raycast hit, so we can use collider to get the collider that we hit, and I can say collider.name to get the name of the collider. Was attacked. Okay. Now with that we can also do some we can add that as a damage. So what I'm going to do is go here and say we are going to say create a variable of type enemy, which remember is another component that we have created called enemy, is equal to hit dot collider dot get component enemy. And we can now, of course, everything we hit is not going to be an enemy. So if the enemy is not equal to null, then we are going to say enemy dot take damage, and we are going to say damage, and this should work. If I let it compile and I open up Unity and I hit the play button, I'm just going to switch to the console window, and now you can see if I shoot, then it said alright, it said null reference exception. Okay, that's kind of bad. At line 16, oh, of course, we want to say if hit.collider is if hit.collider is equal to null, then we want to return, because of course the hit is not necessary that the hit always happens. So if I let that compile and I go into Unity, and you don't need to really start the game again, I can just unpause it, and now you can see if I shoot outside, then nothing happens. But if I shoot here, then you can see ground was attacked, but of course it doesn't take damage. Now if I try to shoot my enemy, then you can see it says enemy receives 0 damage, new health is 100, and the reason it's receiving 0 damage is that we are currently of course if I select my player, then the shooting component damage is 0, but if I increase this to something like 15, then if I shoot the enemy, okay, shoot. Okay, it says enemy receives 15 damage, and now the health is 40 and 25 and then 10 and then 0, and then it remains 0, it doesn't even go below 0. So with that we have got a minimal shooting system pretty much working, even though it's not really obvious that it's shooting anything. So now we are going to make it look a little more beautiful so that we can actually see the shooting. Alright, so how can we show the player that the gun is actually shooting? How can we do that? Now, in order to accomplish that, the best way to do that would be to add a shoot effect, a hit particle effect to the actual cube, along with adding maybe a gun model and a gun animation. But now we are going to do that in the next episode. We are going to add beautiful effects so that our game looks pretty. But for now we are not going to do any of that, and instead we are just going to use this we are going to add a small animation to this cube to show that it's being hit. So what I mean by that, as you can see, I have what I have done here is that I have gone under my materials folder and I have created a new enemy material beforehand, and I have applied this to this enemy, and I have changed its metallic to down to 0, and then the roughness to and the smoothness to 0 as well, which looks pretty good. So with that done, now we can start adding some animations to it. So as you can see, I have set the color to a kind of this kind of color. It's kind of dark grayish, and what I want is a transition from this, a gradual transition from this to red and then back, which should look pretty good. So how are you going to do that? Well, first I'm going to right click and create a new folder here, and just gonna call this one animation. Then what I'm going to do is open up this animations folder, right click and create a new animation. Oh sorry, not really that way. We can do it right click and create a new animation and animator, but what I'm going to do is just select this cube, enemy cube, and then I'm going to open up the animation window by going to window, animation, and then animation, and then I'm going to dock it here, and then I'm going to hit create to create an animation and an animator clip, an animation clip and an animator. In this animation folder, I'm just going to call this animation hit because it's going to be a hit effect. And if I go under project, then you can see that we have got an enemy animator here and an animator controller here, and then we have got our animation clip called hit here as well. So first let's just create the animation real quick, and that is that we are going to so first of all, as you remember, we can keyframe here easily. So what I'm going to do is just turn on recording, and then I'm going to go here and I'm going to select HSV mode here for a little bit easier editing, and I'm going to just set the value to be 73. Okay, and that should add an automatic keyframe, and then I'm going to move to half a second, which is the 30 mark. These are actually frames, not seconds, so there are 60 frames in a second inside of our animation here, so we can say that 30 frames here is going to be half a second. So I'm going to go under this color picker again, and then I'm going to change the saturation to full, which will turn our cube red without changing the actual shade. Then I'm going to move to 1 second exactly here, and then I'm going to just change it back to 0, the saturation. And now you should see that we have, if I hit the play button here, then we have got a working animation here, and I'm going to turn off recording. Alright, that's pretty good. And now if I try to run my game, what should happen is that our enemy should continuously be, alright, this is kind of weird. Okay, so this problem is happening because if I select my camera, if I select my main camera, then okay, so it's just a little bug, don't worry about that too much. So if I hit the play button now, then you can see that our cube is kind of displaying this animation again and again, and that's of course not what we want. We only want it to display it when we actually shoot. So how are we going to do that? Well, first of all, we of course want it to disable displaying the animation by default. And then I'm going to open up this animator controller, and here you can see it opens up a new window called animator. Oh, all right. Not really. I would like it to have it right beside my scene and game view. And here you can see we have got a couple of arrows and a couple of these squares, I guess. So these are basically states, and then we can transition between states by these arrows here, which are called transitions. And currently we have got a bunch of states here, one called any state, which is just any state, and one called the exit state, which is when the animator is exited, and then we at the start we have got the empty state. Now of course we don't need any of these states for now, so I'm going to just move them to the side. And here you can see that we are going by default into our hit state, and of course that's not what we want. We only want to go in the hit state when the enemy is actually hit. So how can we stop this? Now in order to do that, if I just go ahead and try to delete this transition, then it won't work if I press the delete key. So what I'm going to instead do is I'm going to right click in here and go under create state and create a new empty state. Now I can set the name here. I'm just going to call it dummy, and this state contains no animation at all. As you can see in the motion tab, it's empty. I can drag a motion here if I want, but of course I'm going to leave it at empty because we don't want anything here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this dummy, right click and set as layer default state, and that should switch our arrow from here this to this. Now our hit animation is completely separate, but it still exists. If I delete it, then you can see it goes back to hit, so we must have one animation at least. So yeah, our hit animation exists inside the animator, and now we can call it from the code if we ever need to. So how are we going to do that? Now what I'm going to basically do for this is open up Visual Studio, and as you can see, this is our enemy script where we are logging the enemy's new health and doing a bunch of other stuff. And what I'm going to do here is essentially get, first of all, we need to get an reference to our animator controller. So I'm going to create an animator called animator and set it to get component of type animator, and I'm going to say if animator is not equal to null, then we want to go animator.play. So play, this is a really nice function, and here we can give it a name of the state we want to play, and of the state, not of the animation file. So if I say hit, then you can see that this is our hit state here. I could have also called dummy if I wanted to. Now at this point, if I one more thing though is that if you select your hit animation, you need to turn off loop time, or else the animation will keep repeating itself when we trigger it once. Now if I play it, then you should see that it's not playing by default, but if I shoot it, then it plays and then it stops. But if I try to shoot it again, then it won't work, and that is because well, how can we fix that? That a really easy way to fix it is make a transition from this hit back to the dummy state to prevent the animator from exiting. Now if I run the game, then you can see I can go ahead and shoot this and it goes red, and if I shoot it again, it again displays the same animation. And we can see in the console that it's giving the messages as well. So yeah, it was first 80 health, then 60 health, then 40, then 20, and then it remains 0. So that's all pretty good. And this is pretty much it for this video. So I would do like to do a little fix here. Now, if you can see, if I go close to this cube, then we can get this kind of weird effect if I am turning around. Now this is due to clipping, so the camera is trying to not display stuff that is too close to it, which is right. That's the way it's supposed to happen. But currently the threshold it's checking for is a bit too high. To check that, if I select my camera here, then you can see that if I go under the camera settings, then you can see we have got here clipping planes. Now we have got a near plane of 0.3, which means anything that is closer than 0.3 units to this camera will not be shown, which is really high, especially for a first person game. So I'm going to now never set it to 0. That never works. So if I just set it to 0, it automatically gets it back to 0.01, which is pretty good, I guess. I'm just going to leave it at that. But now you can see, we can see our cube here, which we added as sunglasses kind of thing. Here we can see them through the camera, which really shouldn't happen. So in order to fix that, I'm just going to increase the Y a little bit so it's exactly inside the camera, and that should fix our problem. Now if I hit play, then that glitch should disappear. So if I go here, I can shoot my cube, and if I do this, then nothing problematic happens. So that's pretty much it for this video, and in the next video we will actually make our game look beautiful by adding materials to the ground and textures, and then adding maybe a gun model and then some hit particle effects. So stay tuned for that, and also like and subscribe. So I will see you in the next video. Bye.